Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll get started in just a moment as others join us. In the meantime, please introduce yourselves in the chat. Please add your name, your organization, where you're joining us from. And if you'd like, please add your preferred pronouns as well. And we'll get started shortly. Thank you. Thank you again for joining us today. Welcome. Please add your name, your country, where you're joining us from to the chat. And if you'd like, please add your preferred pronouns as well. And we'll get started in just a moment. I see folks are already introducing themselves. Thank you so much. So please add your name and where you're joining us from, as well as your preferred pronouns, if you'd like, to the chat. Thanks so much for introducing yourselves. Please continue to introduce yourselves in the chat as we get started. You can add your name, your organization, where you're joining us from, as well as your preferred pronouns if you'd like. And I want to thank you again for joining us. We're so excited to kick off the NextGen RH CoP. My name is Brittany Getch. I'm a program officer on the Knowledge Success Project at Johns Hopkins Center for Communication Programs. Knowledge Success is excited to be launching this CoP alongside our co-chairs and advisory committee. This webinar will last for approximately an hour, and we'll introduce you to the advisory committee, dive into the design process of the CoP, take a look at its current structure and ways for you to participate. And this webinar is being simultaneously interpreted into French, and it's being recorded in both English and French. The recordings will be available in the coming days. And if you haven't already done so, please select the preferred language that you'd like to listen to this webinar in by selecting the globe icon, clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can then select which language you'd like to listen in, and you can select if you'd like to mute the original audio. You may select whether or not you'd like to read captions during today's webinar as well. Captions should be appearing automatically, but if not, you can select to read them and have them appear by clicking on the icon with the two C's at the bottom of the Zoom screen. You can then choose to hide the captions later if you wish as well. On the Zoom platform, these captions are generated using an automatic feature, so they may not be 100% accurate. Participants are muted throughout this conversation, but if you have questions for our presenters and during this webinar, please type them in the chat box, and my Knowledge Success colleagues will be moderating the chat box, and we'll get to as many questions as time allows. In March of 2022, we put out a call for advisory committee members to join us in this journey to respond to the expressed need for knowledge sharing among those working in adolescent youth reproductive health, sexual and reproductive health. From this call and almost 300 applicants, we asked 13 people from around the world to form an advisory committee. We engaged in a deeply reflective design process to lead discussions that brought together advisory committee members and co-chairs to lead discussions on specific knowledge and capacity needs in AYSRH, what our priorities would be, and how we would design a COP structure that would respond to these needs and ensure that all voices were included and valued. To discuss these goals and objectives more, I'm pleased to introduce our COP co-chair. Irene is an established social economist with over 13 years experience in research, policy analysis, knowledge management, and partnership engagement. As a researcher, she's been involved in the coordination and implementation of over 20 social economic research projects in various disciplines within the Eastern African region. In her work as a knowledge management consultant, Irene has been involved in health-related studies through work with public health and technology-focused institutions in Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, and Malawi, where she has successfully teased out impact stories and increased visibility of project interventions. In the emerging practice of human-centered design, Irene has successfully facilitated a positive end-to-end product experience through conducting user experience studies while implementing the USAID Dreams project amongst adolescent girls and young women in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Irene will introduce you to our youth co-chair, who you see on the screen here, as well as our advisory committee members, and review with you our current COP objectives and vision. Welcome, Irene.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever it is that you're joining us. We're very excited to have this meeting today. Thank you so much, Brittany, for the introduction. This is a journey that has taken a minute, and we're finally here. We're very excited about it. So I'm very happy to introduce to you the rest of the co-chair delegation, and we have Pooja Kapahi, and Pooja is the organizer of the Digital Communications and Campaign at the UNI Global Asia and Pacific. Next, we have, as you can see on the screen, Brittany, who has already introduced herself at the beginning of our introductory remark. And she's the Community Practice Coordinator and working with the Johns Hopkins Center for Communications program, also with the host organization, which is Knowledge Success. Joining us as well, and in the co-chair of the Knowledge Success team, is Kate Plurd, who is the Youth Technical Advisor and works for FHI 360 and represents Knowledge Success as well. Next slide. So I'm sure all of you are curious to know what the NextGen RH is. And the NextGen Reproductive Health is a community of practice that provides technical leadership and effective implementation of adolescents, youth, sexual reproductive health programs, and advances the research agenda. We promote collaboration, innovation, knowledge exchange, and management within the AYSRH sphere. So the COP is led and designed by youth and for youth who are family planning reproductive health practitioners in Africa and Asia. So we also are not close to participation by other continents or regions. So everyone is welcome into the NextGen RH, but the designing and the implementation is mainly with African and Asian youth in FPRH. Next slide. So I'm very happy to introduce to you a group of people who have been very pivotal in this particular community of practice. And I would in there 13, and I would like to introduce each and every one of them just by name and position. So This team has been leading in collaboration with the co-chairs that I've introduced previously in the 2 slides, and the knowledge success team, coordination team, to design the NextGen RH CoP, which is what is being hosted at this particular moment. So we do have our first member, who is Blessed Chetachi Peter, and is the founder and executive director of Blessed Health Spring Initiative in Nigeria. We have Danish Tariq, Program Officer, Chenan Development Association, International Engagement Coordinator, Youth Advocacy Network, Yan in Pakistan. We have Dr. Kongong Rubenchia, the Programs Director, Organizations for Health and Sustainable Development in Cameroon. We also have Redia Nagusi, who is a doctor, a medical doctor at Amref Health Africa in Ethiopia. Margaret Bolaji, the Executive Director and Founder of Stand With a Girl Initiative in Nigeria. Ngong Justin Che, the co-founder and programs lead of Youth to Youth Cameroon, and was also the FP 2030 Youth Focal Point for Cameroon. We have Noor Mohammed Ferdous Chowdhury, who is the project manager of Plan International in Bangladesh. We have Saustin Geoffrey Lasanzo, who is the Youth Sounding Board member from the Swift Development Corporation in Tanzania and the team leader in UNICEF Tanzania. There is Elijah Nsonge, a child protection and participation coordinator from Save the Children in Zambia. We have Innocent Grant, program director, Young and Alive Tanzania. We have John Kumwenda, the executive director of Buthu Walero in Malawi. We have Connie Wendy Baka, who's the co-founder, Belua Future Leaders Foundation in Nigeria. And finally, we have Arafat Kabugo, who's the program manager, Naguru Youth Health Network in Uganda. Please join me. These are the 13 members who have been leading the agenda for the advisory for the NextGen RH CoP, and they are the advisory committee members. Now we'll go into an exercise. I believe all of us are working in the AYSRH sector or area, and we would like to know a little bit about what excites you in AYSRH. So there's going to be a link that will be put in the chat box. Please click on it, and on it, please just tell us what exactly excites you about your work in AYSRH. What makes you do this work in AYSRH? Why do you focus on it? A link has been posted on the chat box. Just take a moment and type in your response. Does anyone have an issue getting into the link? If you're having a challenge, get
Hi, everyone. I think we might have lost Irene, but I just wanted to read off some of these. The need to work for something which is the basis of human life, but a taboo subject. Empowering young people, empowering young women to better understand their health, making healthy decisions, more positive, pleasure-based experiences. These are some great answers. Irene, welcome back. Back to you.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I lost internet for a second there. Oh, these are such interesting answers. As a woman, I want to help young people not make the same mistakes I did. I want to empower young women to do better, to better understand their health, be more proactive in making health decisions, and have more positive pleasure-based experiences. Oh, this is lovely because adolescents have less information about their reproductive health. This makes them more prone. As a woman, oh, that's the second one. Please keep the responses coming. Providing credible information to adolescents and youth. That comes up a lot of times, especially in the region that I work in, which is East Africa. And I know it's similar in other regions. Keep the responses coming. We want to know what excites you about your work in adolescents, youth, sexual reproductive health, why you love working with adolescents, why you want to advance sexual reproductive health and rights in for youth. Keep the answers coming. We're loving them. I'm loving the French response. I cannot interpret, but
to bridge the gap of the unavailability of special services to youth. Okay, I'll repeat again, to bridge the gap of the unavailability of services to youth.
Wants to help shape responses to adolescent sexual reproductive health through consultation with direct beneficiaries, ensuring that we take their views and points. And that is very important. Addressing the gaps in young people's general health, sexual reproductive health programs. In Malawi, sharing knowledge with younger generations, dispelling myths and misconceptions. Great answers coming up. I can sense the passion and commitment in the answers that are coming up. Access for adolescents, especially for marginalized communities, breaking social cultural barriers regarding to sexual reproductive health. Amazing. This just it makes me feel like you're in the right space, because this is why we created this community, and we are happy that the objectives of our this community are going to respond to what excites you about your work in AYSRH. All right, Brittany, making adolescents accept themselves and knowing that they're not in this alone. That's great. Thank you so much, ingenuity of the youth. Thank you so much for giving us those responses. We'll move on ahead to the objectives of the community of practice, and this will just reestablish why we formed this particular space and platform for young people. So the objectives of the community of practice were created through a design process that you'll hear more about in a minute. And these objectives will guide the community of practice for the next 2 years. So through the design process, and it was a co-creation process, we just didn't come out of the blue and say, oh goodness, here we are, we'd like to have a community of youth talking about youth issues in sexual reproductive health. No, we actually consulted, and we picked particular aspects in AYSRH, and through the design process, 5 prominent gaps were identified, and they were refined into objectives. The prominent gaps included knowledge sharing, advocating for adolescent youth and sexual reproductive health needs, inter-organizational youth networks, capacity building for adolescent youth, sexual reproductive health professionals, and reporting the needs of the young people. From these, further discussions led to 4 objectives, and the first 2 you can see on the screen. So our objectives as regards creating content and research, digging deep into issues on AYSRH, included research and documentation. Within research and documentation, we're looking to create capacity strengthening opportunities for adolescents, youth, and sexual reproductive health research. That includes data collection, data analysis, data presentation, just the synthesis and dissemination. In addition to that, we would like to facilitate sharing innovative best practice, lessons learned, research methodology, tools, and findings on a global platform. We also looked at advocacy, and within advocacy, we're looking at improving professionals' capacity to advocate for AYSRH and engage CSOs and other stakeholders through local and international coalitions. We also would love to create opportunities for capacity strengthening, knowledge exchange, resource mobilization, sharing best practices, and building accountability within this sector. The last 2 objectives are partnership and engagement and knowledge sharing. Within partnership, we would like to build partnerships between AYSRH professionals through existing mechanism for emerging communities in sexual reproductive health programming, specifically for involving unconventional gatekeepers. That includes the unions and political leaders, influencers, and religious leaders. Secondly, we'd like to strengthen healthcare information and systems, partnerships amongst youth, relationships between researchers, programmers, and technical advisors, and the youth themselves. And thirdly, within partnership and engagement, we would like to strengthen partnership amongst youth leaders and local organizations. In knowledge sharing, is because there was a need for information and platforms for sharing, we would like to utilize knowledge platforms, existing ones, to assist young people working on designing and implementing adolescents, youth, and sexual reproductive health programs, encompassing information and tools on power dynamics, gender transformation approaches to exchange this knowledge. I am very pleased to take the mic and pass it on to our advisory committee member, Innocent Grant, to take us through the design process for the community of practice. Innocent, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Irene. This is very informative. I'm very pleased to join today's launch for the NextGen RH CoP. And allow me to switch off my video because we are having quite a power cut and looks like I'm in the dark. So I'll switch off my video and then I'll proceed on presenting on this CoP design process. So as Irene and Britton said, since 2022, the advisory committee of the NextGen RH have been working to develop the new CoP for the NextGen RH, which involved different steps. And we've been meeting once every month to co-design a collaborative community of practice led by young people. And a big concern was in responding to a question: how might we build an interactive CoP to enhance collaborations, innovations, knowledge sharing, and knowledge management? I'll repeat that question again. During the design process, a big question on our side was on how might we build an interactive COP to enhance collaborations, innovation, knowledge sharing, and knowledge management. We went through different steps to make sure that to respond to this question that involved design meetings that was conducted. We had interactive discussions. We had exercises which helped us to foster trust and learn vulnerabilities and open conversations about critical issues which are facing the field of adolescent and youth sexual and reproductive health issues. The advisory committee also had gathered multiple times into organizing mini workshops on topics such as public speaking, building strategies, knowledge building strategies, and content creation. So I also want to take you now on the actual processes that led us to have this COP, the Committee of Practice for the NextGen RH. And we are really envisioning huge collaborations, innovation, knowledge sharing, and knowledge management, as I said at first. So we developed and adopted a socio-ecological model, which was focused on knowledge management needs and gaps. The socio-ecological model exercise helped members to reflect on challenges that professionals, as well as young people, face in their homes and communities in accessing and exchanging knowledge on adolescent and youth sexual and reproductive health topics. So members met and discussed on how knowledge sharing functions across multiple contexts. We then conducted needs gaps analysis, just as Irene described. This was the next process after the socio-ecological model, which really helped us to establish those kinds of relationships. We then went into conducting needs gaps analysis, which really helped us to develop the COP objectives as were described by my colleague. Those needs that were identified were later being refined and been turned into objectives. Some of the needs, as mentioned by Irene, included knowledge sharing, advocating for adolescent and youth sexual and reproductive health needs, interorganizational youth networks, capacity building for adolescent and youth sexual and reproductive health, and reporting the needs of young people. After that process of refining the needs together with the advisory committee members, we then went into building the objectives to guide this community of practice for the NextGen RH. So the objectives, as mentioned again by Irene, included AYSRH research and documentation. This involves create capacity and opportunities for adolescents and youth sexual and reproductive health research, including data collection, analysis, and interpretation. But also the work of advocacy, as we understand, it's important to improve adolescents and youth sexual and reproductive health professionals' capacity to advocate for AYSRH and engage civil society organizations and other stakeholders through local and national coalitions. We also developed an objective on partnership and engagement, which is among my favorites. We understand when we have partnerships, when we build partnerships, helps to expand the scope of the work that we are doing, helps to reach a more wider community. And knowledge management work is very important that we build partnerships. So building partnership between AYSRH professionals and existing mechanisms for engaging communities in SRH programming, especially unconventional gatekeepers, including union political leaders, influencers, religious leaders. All these people play an important role in making sure that adolescent and youth sexual and reproductive health are being attained. And lastly, knowledge sharing, using knowledge platforms to assist young people working on designing and implementation of AYSRH programs, as well as sharing information and tools on power dynamics and gender transformative approaches. Lastly, we drafted a terms of reference for the community of practice. And here we are now. We are really looking forward, as I mentioned at first, into having a community of practice and which will be enhancing collaborations, innovation, knowledge sharing, and knowledge management. I would love to end it here and bring it back to my colleague, Britton, to proceed with the next presentation. Thank you so much. Britton, back to you.
Thanks so much, Innocent. We are now going to turn to our look at a structure. And this, I will turn it back over to Irene to walk us through the COP structure. So Innocent mentioned really going through this design process to take a look at one of the larger questions he mentioned was to take a look at what how might we design a COP that could meet these objectives and these needs that we identified through the needs gap analysis and the adapted socio-ecological model. So to explore this in more detail, I'm going to hand it over to Irene.
Thank you so much, Brittany, and thank you, Innocent, for taking us through the journey that has been and now has come to fruition. So I've been referring back and forth to the structure, and as we started at the beginning of this particular kickoff session, we talked about the co-chairs and we introduced the advisory committee. So the community of practice is supported by youth co-chairs, an advisory committee, and general members, and guided by certain rules and expectations. As you can see on your screen, we have the co-chairs. There are two co-chairs, and it's at the top of the hierarchy. As you can see, there are two co-chairs. There's the lead. These two co-chairs lead the community of practice in collaboration with the other co-chair. Pooja is one of the co-chairs, and we have me. And then there's the community of practice coordinator, and the community of practice coordinator is the institution which will be supporting this. It can sit anywhere, but at the current moment, it is Knowledge Success. So the co-chairs, they lead the community of practice in collaboration with the other co-chair and the community of practice coordinators with inputs from the technical advisors working with the coordinating organization. So as you can see in this figure, there is the co-chairs, and on your right, you'll have the Knowledge Success team. Next in this structure is the advisory committee. At the beginning of this session, I introduced 13 individuals and mentioned them by name and institution. And if you notice, they come from the different regions of Asia and Africa. We also have the consideration of Latin America, but we haven't been successful in getting somebody in. However, the advisory committee constitutes of 13 members and from the 3 regions of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Ideally, 4 representatives per region and 4 to 5 representatives per region. So the main function of the advisory committee is to keep also the co-chairs in check and to lead the agenda of the community of practice. So they manage the implementation of the community of practice in collaboration with the co-chairs and support and lead the activities designed and implemented under the direction of the co-chairs. Remember, we had the objectives that we mentioned earlier on, and we have 4 different focus areas which the community of practice works on to ensure that adolescents and youth reproductive, sexual reproductive health issues are on the fore of the community of practice. So in the next slide, we do have a third tier where we have objective working groups. And these are members from the community of practice led by the advisory committee. And the idea is to develop work plans for 6 months of activities to meet the objectives with at least 2 key indicators identified to monitor the progress. So remember, we have research and documentation, we have advocacy, we have knowledge management, and one more. So these, the small objective working group comprise of 5 members each. So in total, we usually have, we're looking for a structure of 20 people who would be leading the conversations with these sub-objectives within the community of practice. So the second thing that they do is coordinate and implement objective activities in collaboration with the advisory committee, co-chairs, and the COP coordinator. So you can see it all works as one unit. And finally, we have you, the general members. And the general members are the ones who actually make the community. And we get insight from the general members, and we create activities and points of discussion on AYSRH issues within the globe. So members' responsibilities and expectation for the community of practice when you join. One is to attend the meetings of the community of practice, because without this meetings, then we wouldn't be able to set up an agenda. These meetings are also for networking and collaboration. That is where we are guided by certain objectives. And we encourage members to engage in content development as and when need and desired. We also expect the members to contribute to the content within the subgroups that I had mentioned before, with a guidance from the small objective working group. So that is the structure of the COP. Every individual who is here today has a role to play, and Brittany will share a document, a link on the chat that will outline specifically the broader expectations and the more intricate expectation for each of the titles within the structure of the community of practice. I would like to stop here and invite Margaret to share with us an activity that will get us to learn more about the community of practice and our agenda. Margaret, welcome.
Thank you so much, Irene, and everyone that has spoken. I mean, it's been a wonderful conversation so far. So at this point, we'll just take a poll like you did earlier. We'll look forward to hearing from you. And I particularly love this because for me, this is where hope lies. This is what inspires us to continue to do the great job we do in AYSRH. And just knowing for me that, I mean, this is the generation that would really change the narrative with regards to sexual and reproductive health and rights. So what does, and the question is, what does the ideal future of AYSRH looks like? So for you, what would you say when you close your eyes and open it, or when even before opening it, right? What comes to mind? What is the future of AYSRH? What do you envisage when you think of AYSRH in the future? You have the link on the chat box. Just click on it and put in your comments. I'll be looking forward to reading them. Just drop that. I mean, it could be a word, it could be a sentence. Feel free to put in that future that you see when you think of adolescent and youth sexual and reproductive health. What does the ideal future of AYSRH looks like? I look forward to reading from you. Let me also know if you have any challenge accessing the pool. It's already, the link, it's on the chat box already. Just click on it and input your comments, that future that you see when you think of adolescent and you say, oh, wow, we have the first one, aside from the X. And maybe we need to unbundle what X is, right? Okay, a world where adolescent makes informed choices about their reproductive health. Absolutely, this is very important. Yeah, you say now we have informed decision, informed choices, making on sexual and reproductive health by adolescent and youth. So we buy them. Let's see if there's gonna be with them. Okay, just keep it coming. What future do you see? I mean, you think of adolescent and youth sexual and reproductive health. What do you see? What comes to mind? And honestly, for me, this is really important because this is what wakes me up in the morning. Yeah, collaboration and synergies in AYSRH. Absolutely. This is also very key. I mean, in the face of limited resources, and when we also put in sustainability in view, then collaboration synergy is important. Every young person receives comprehensive sexual education in their schools. Stigma around speaking about sexual and reproductive health is removed. Yes, we need to start normalizing sexual and reproductive health and rights. Thank you for sharing. Young people have equal and free health access, very equitable access, free access. It's important. The ideal future of AYSRH is that every adolescent has enough information of knowledge, important, Forgive me, I don't also know I can read French. The ideal future is accessible adolescent sexual and reproductive health services for all adolescents, as well as strengthen feedback mechanism to, so this is also very key, feedback mechanism where you can actually identify and correct gaps in quick succession. Thank you. When they arise, research orientation on SRHR. Okay, so we need to know more. We need to research into SRHR. Thank you. Keep them coming. I guess we have just 1 more minute to go. More women in leadership role. Absolutely. A community with their body autonomy and decision making. Exciting future. I mean, for me, I am inspired. I really look forward to it. Let's see if we can take 1 more as we close. But absolutely, thank you so very much. I mean, with all of those big dreams, I tell you, it is possible. We just all hands need to be on deck. We need to work together. And I think that the community of practice, I know that the community of practice, the NextGen community of practice, it's positioned to make this happen as we continue to collaborate and work with one another. That community we are, and let's continue to push until every adolescent, no matter where they are able to access equitable and quality sexual and reproductive health information and services, like we all have said. Thank you so much. And let me just pass it on to Brittany.
Thanks so much, Margaret. These answers are wonderful. We've really enjoyed reading them. Please keep them coming. We will, kind of record these, and we will ensure that they are incorporated, and we're looking to incorporating a lot of these answers and dreaming big when we think about the ideal future of AYSRH. As you can tell, I hope you can tell, the passion, the excitement is infectious among our advisory committee members and among our co-chairs as well. So we hope that you will keep these answers coming. Thanks so much for adding them. All right, I'm going to move us along in the slides though, so we can get to your questions if you have any. So please add any questions that you might have to the chat box. My colleagues will be adding them, and we can address them if you have them. Again, please add them to the chat box if you have any questions. I noticed earlier there was a question regarding the presentations and whether the presentation and whether it would be shared. We're happy to send out the slides following today's kickoff webinar. And just a reminder that it is being recorded in both English and French, so we will share those recordings as well. So any questions that you have for our presenters specifically about the structure, the design process, please feel free to add them to the chat. Thank you so much to those folks who have shared their experiences in the chat. It sounds like several of you have really interesting projects that you're working on, and we really appreciate you mentioning them and sharing them in the chat as well. We're always interested in learning about new and exciting opportunities and approaches. Again, keep your answers to the Poll Everywhere question coming. The ideal future to AYSRH, what does it look like? And if you have any other questions, please add them to the chat box. We are happy to answer, if you have specific questions for Irene or for Innocent or Margaret, or, speaking to the structure or the design process, happy to answer those. We've also added a few links in the chat as well to blog posts that are published on the Knowledge Success website. You can check those out for more information, learn more about the advisory committee members. We have some really great profiles that are on those the blog posts, as well as a little bit more of a look at our design process as well, and the steps that we've taken that Innocent shared today. So please check those out. We encourage you to look those up on our website. The links are in the chat. We'll also make sure that we're sharing those after today's webinar as well. We can include those in our follow-up to this webinar. Great. All right. Yes, there's a question in the chat. How do we give access of information in an equitable amount to adolescents as possible? So what our opinion is on that. And I think we saw, in the answers that folks responded to the poll questions, that equity is a large consideration in this space, especially working with various groups of young people to ensure that everyone has access to that information. Everyone is able to share information and knowledge so that we're really sharing, our best practices, lessons learned among AYSRH professionals, but also, youth leaders and really pioneers in this field, folks who are driving the AYSRH agenda forward. And I would, I would say that is a deeply held value among the advisory committee members, the co-chairs, as well as the coordinating team at Knowledge Success, that we are considering equity among ensuring that equitable access to information at all levels and with every person. Thanks for that great question. Any other questions? I see there's a question about a follow-up meeting. We'll address that shortly, but anything else for our presenters, Irene, Innocent, Margaret, or about the structure, objectives? Now is the time. And maybe while we're, as folks think of their questions, perhaps I will just mention a few next steps. So please share the outreach email that you received with your networks and your colleagues. Please also share, the blog posts as well that we've linked in the chat. We have a homepage on knowledgesuccess.org as well for NextGen RH. Please, we encourage you to share that with your networks and colleagues as well. Information about these objectives small working groups will be coming out shortly as well, so please look out for that. And we are planning our next general meeting for June. So we will be sending out communications regarding that next general meeting shortly so that it is on everyone's calendar. We have the time reserved and everyone has time to plan that into their schedules. So we hope that you're able to join us in June when we meet again. You can also follow Knowledge Success at FPRH Knowledge, and you can get up to date on upcoming events, activities, and resources related to NextGen RH, but also related to our larger project activities, events, and resources as well. All right. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you all. I want to thank our advisory committee members. And if our advisory committee members could go on their cameras just to say goodbye to folks, that would be great. Thanks so much for joining us. And we want to thank all of you for your great responses to the Poll Everywhere questions, your great responses in the chat. We've greatly enjoyed being with you for this hour today. And we want to thank you for taking time out of your day or evening. I know it's evening in a lot of places as well. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and please be sure to share that outreach email, share those blog posts, as well as our homepage, and look out for more information coming in June. Thank you all again for joining.